Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the few-minute late start here, but we appreciate your patience. One of the things I'd like to encourage anybody that has not had the opportunity yet is to go ahead and participate in the poll that's going on. That's going to wrap up here in just a moment or two, but we'd love to get your input into that to help guide today's discussion. Now, one of the other ways that you'll have the opportunity to participate in the discussion is through the questions and answers panel of the WebEx events. So in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a little tab that says Q&A. And the way that works is you'll have the opportunity to type in a question and send that in. That will then come to Randy, myself, and the panelists, and we'll either work that into the discussion that's going on, or we'll respond back directly in the question and answers. But we do want to encourage you to use that as much as possible to be part of the discussion and let us know what you're thinking. And today we're going to be talking about reopening and training your staff for COVID challenges. So the last several weeks we've had seen a lot of great attractions coming back and reopening, and we've been taking these last few webinars to really learn from each other on what has happened during that reopening and what's been successful and what maybe we want to tweak. So we'll be continuing that today with about a 90-minute discussion. So we have a host of panelists that are going to share their insights and respond to the questions that you may have. We would like to ask if we have any members of the media that are attending today that you just drop your name and publication into the question and answers. We'd be happy to make sure that you're connected to any of our panelists if there's ultimately anything that you'd like to do and feature in your publication or media with that. So today is just going to be a great discussion and a community gathering. So this is probably our 13th webinar now. Kind of the word cloud that you see on the screen is an example of kind of the topics that we've been covering. And really what this just is just attraction industry experts getting together and discussing the current challenges and figuring out how we can position each of our attractions for success. So we're super glad that you joined us to be part of that. And we look forward to having some really good discussion.
Hey, awesome. Thank you, Matt. My name is Randy, and welcome to our gathering here. This is that continuation that Matthew had mentioned of our webinar series. If you missed any of our webinars, we've been doing them every other week now. You can go to gatewayticketing.com/community. You can scan the QR code on your screen right there. You can catch up and watch recordings of some of our past content. From there, you could also just download the presentation, send emails, and ask further questions if you'd like. We're really happy to be continuing this series. My partner here is Matthew. He's our destinations principal here at Gateway Ticketing, and I'm Randy Jocelyn. That's our contact information. This is an amazing gathering today of industry experts, and I was joking, it's kind of like our, zoo webinar, or our Zoominar, because today we are talking to a lot of zoos, but all of these zoos have different challenges, different attractions, and in different regions of the U.S., and we just have a great group of people. So joining us today on the panel from the Detroit Zoological Society is Randy Hamilton. Hi, Randy. We also have from the Kansas City Zoo, Ida Hafner. She's the Assistant Manager of Memberships. An expert in the industry that really helps so many of these attractions train and get ready and do customer service and revenue operations. Deborah Coons is joining us today. She's the President of DK Leadership. And we're going to switch gears over to Phoenix. There's Janelle Wood. They've been open for a number of weeks now. Janelle is the Guest Services and Experiences Manager. And then our friends in Cincinnati, Jared Vaughn, the Senior Manager of Visitor Experience and Rachel Robertson, who works with Jared, their Manager of Visitor Experience and Fun. So unbelievable group of people today. Great perspectives from different zoos, different challenges. So we're really excited to hear from them. It's a packed agenda. We'll do our best to keep things moving along. We know you're going to have many questions. A lot of behind the scenes conversations as well. This is a great group of people to ask any training questions, guest services, hospitality. How do you keep things clean? What does it look like when employees come to work? We've got a great group of people to walk through those conversations. Helping us behind the scenes is our expert product manager, Bill D'Angelo. He's our communications manager at Gateway, but he's going to be answering a lot of questions for us. If you have any comments or concerns, shoot them over to Bill in the Q&A, and we will answer them as quickly as possible. Whew. All right, I'm going to pass it off to you, Matthew, for an industry update.
Thanks, Randy. So one of the first items that we wanted to share is what we had seen coming out of one of the zoos, the Beardsley Zoo, and that was developing kind of a product bundle that they made available to help kind of bring in revenue to the attraction where some folks may not be able to visit it. So this was a virtual wild wine, beer, and food safari. So you could purchase this on their site and then swing by the zoo and pick up kind of a package. That way that, one, you got to benefit as well as the zoo was able to benefit from your generosity. We got some exciting news that came out of the United Kingdom yesterday when the Prime Minister there announced that starting on July 4th, they will be reopening several different forms of business, and one of those obviously being attractions. So we've seen a lot of good news out of the United Kingdom with attractions like Pleasure Beach, the Merlin Parks, Drayton Manor, all announcing that they'll be reopening very shortly. We have other attractions like the Museum of Space that may be just taking a little bit more time, but are super excited now that closure is coming to an end. Additionally, there they have reduced the need for physical distancing in some areas. So they've moved from a 2-meter physical distancing to a 1-meter plus. And really that plus is saying, hey, if we can't get to the 2-meter distance, we need to have other things in place, that maybe face masks or other forms of ways to ensure safety of the visitors. So some exciting news coming out of the United Kingdom.
We actually even heard that it's challenging because some of this news happened pretty quickly. And, this is an example that we're starting to see in the U.S. as well. And maybe we'll hear from some of our panelists where we very quickly got reopening orders, and then there's this kind of like scramble to get everything up and running. So many of us that are listening today as an attendee, they haven't opened yet, but that reopening might just be around the corner, and obviously you need to move pretty quickly. I do love boom, we're back, and the energy related to all the marketing pieces here. It's exciting stuff out of the UK.
Great, thanks, Randy. One of the other things I just wanted to kind of draw attention to was the spotlight that is on attractions when they reopen. So many of y'all will know that I live here in Orlando, Florida, so I'm very plugged into kind of what's happening with attractions here in that space. So I follow a fair amount of social media and things like that. And unfortunately, SeaWorld got a little bit of bad kind of internal press or kind of fan press when they reopened, and there was some feedback that maybe that their ambassadors weren't kind of enforcing certain policies, and there was a little bit of a fear at that initial reopening. The good thing is I think that the focus that SeaWorld had on that and seeing any of that and addressing it quickly turned it around. So kind of what you see on the screen right now is an article done by Attractions Magazine right at reopening where they felt things were a little bit off. And then on the right-hand side, just a week later, you see they went back and they said, you know what, things are really working out well. And one of the key takeaways for me here was just kind of making sure that, that initial launch, that initial splash is pretty important, because everybody is laser focused on, are you doing the right things? They're making that decision on if they're going to stick with you. So just one of the key learnings I picked up there. And Randy, I think you had seen some stuff happening out in California.
Yeah, and this is also kind of really off the press news here. And as we saw at Disneyland and Universal just make their announcements to reopen, we're also starting to see a little bit of that pushback from the unions and the workforce. to make sure that there is a safe opening. I think we might hear the same sentiments echoed perhaps in the UK as well, but it's certainly something to be aware of that attractions are excited to reopen. My family we're busting at the seams wanting to reopen everywhere. We want to go and visit all these different attractions, but the flip side is, there's some concerns. There's the water's a little tepid. Everyone's really worried about what's coming next. How is the staff going to be treated? And that's really something to consider today as we're having these conversations. I know many of us are reopening, and we have to take care of our staff, and they're our number one asset. So we are starting to see a little bit of some conversations about what is the best practice to reopen. So maybe echoes a little bit of that conversation that we were just having about SeaWorld, but we're going to hear a little bit more for this. And I think the cautionary tale here is these are large attractions, and what they put in place might have downstream effects for your attractions as you reopen as well. Also, kind of maybe very close to home for our company, and also for you, Matthew, being kind of just right around the corner. This was an article that actually came out a little bit ago in June. But if you don't know about Give Kids the World, starting at the end of this week, they're going to be laying off their staff because they really cannot reopen. One of their major benefactors is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And if you don't know what Give Kids the World, if you don't know about them, please just look them up. They're a fantastic organization in Orlando where special need children can come and visit this village, and they assist the process of taking these children to the attractions as they reopen. So while Disney World and Universal and SeaWorld are reopening, unfortunately, the team at Give Kids the World is not able to provide that awesome service. So we do want to make a little shout out. There's some links here. This is a great time to recognize them and perhaps consider them in your donations. They're near and dear to our heart. We do a lot of things at Gateway Ticketing with Give Kids the World. So definitely check them out and see how you can help. Much closer to home, I want to share a personal industry update. My family went to our local zoo, and just like many of us, they had to wear masks. Everybody, you could see some nice imagery. My wife did a great job, just like I'm sure so many of our friends and family and spouses that are in this industry. They send lots of pictures of attractions, and my wife was sending me pictures nonstop throughout the day. It was a good experience. This was a rope bridge that was a one-way rope bridge, but the joke here is that, some people just aren't going to obey your signs no matter what you do. You can try to tell them to do one thing, but, you have to be cautionary about the process. Of course, they've got some great signage as well. So I just thought I'd share a little personal story about my family having an opportunity to venture out. They had a great time, and we're going to be going back next week, so we're excited. So a little information about reopening. Matthew, you had a poll question. Do you want to share some of that information?
Yeah. So we're as we would have expected, we've done this same poll question now for a few weeks in a row, and we're continuing to see more and more attractions moving into that open space. So back when we did this on May 27th, about 9% of you said, hey, we're open. Last June 10th, you said about 17%. Now about 29% of folks are opening. So we're continuing to see everybody moving in that direction. And it's exciting. There's still a few attractions that are 1 to 2 months before reopening, but we're glad to see that moving to an opening state.
Yeah, I think something that jumps out at me here though is that we've got well over 50% are in that 4 to 9 plus week.
Yep.
So, I think that there's a good opportunity to continue to learn and see what's going on. But to talk about reopenings, we've been following the journey of our friends at the Cincinnati Zoo for some time. We've had their superstar hippo Fiona join us on a call, And this slide right here was a video of the reopening of the Cincinnati Zoo. Some of you guys might have saw or heard us trying to get this to display properly. Unfortunately, we don't. We're going to give you guys a YouTube link, and we'll give everybody that's in attendance that link. In fact, we could probably do it in the chat right now. But it's a great little welcome opening. Jared and Rachel, why don't you guys take us through how the reopening went on opening day and what you guys have been doing lately?
Sure. Thanks, Randy. I'll start with the visitor experience side of things. I had the opportunity to join our reopening committee to help plan out the strategy for how we were going to communicate and what that visitor experience was going to look like when we reopened. And the big thing that we really focused on was communication. There's going to be a lot of changes. We have a member base of 68,000 plus households. So when you have those people coming back, they're used to their traditional zoo experience, and we're forcing them to make a lot of changes, such as the big one, making a reservation before they visit, which was a rude awakening for a lot of people, even in the COVID world that we live in now. So I displayed a couple of things here. We have a pop-up that displays on our website with some key reopening things that folks are able to see, just some of the very important things, like the fact that we don't have any buildings open. Until today, we actually just opened a few, that our attractions are closed. You need to make a reservation, just key health and safety tips for them as well. We sent out a lot of pre-visit preparation communication. So whether that's on our website or sending out that confirmation email packed with information, sending out the pre-visit email packed with information utilizing CRM, the web store experience itself packed with information. Our hope is if people see it enough times, they may be able to just grab half of it and come to prepare for their visit. So in addition to that, we also send out Zmail communication to anyone that's subscribed in our member households that are subscribed. We included a video in that as well with our director and a couple of our awesome marketing folks out in the zoo actually displaying what that visitor experience looks like.
Awesome. Advance your slide. Your website has done a great job as well. I would say it's one of the websites I've shared with other attractions when they've asked me, what are some good pre-communications. I think you guys have done a really great job putting up there all that important piece of information for your guests before they arrive.
Right. And part of that too is, with 68,000 member households, asking people to hang on with us as a nonprofit organization that really relies on our membership sales to, I discussed in a previous webinar that we took the path of not just automatically extending folks for the period of time that we were closed, but instead giving them a choice of donating those months of their membership to us to help support us in such a critical time, or we would be happy to extend their membership that period of time that we were closed. So a big focus for us is making sure that we thank our community for being with us during such a difficult time, whether that's our home safaris that we had on Facebook, or like I said, donating those months of membership, or donating to our emergency operating fund. The big thing that we really wanted to put out there when people came back was not so much in your face about all the safety stuff, because obviously that's going to be present wherever you're in the zoo, whether that's hand sanitizers or hippo prints that are on the ground encouraging people to socially distance. We also wanted to have the signs that are out there. So you can see in the pictures that I provided, we've got little signs like yard signs that are all over the zoo, just telling people welcome back, we missed you, thanking people for their support with a giant banner that you can see there at our main gate. We've got those in a number of places around the zoo, and we feel like that positive message really helps to contribute to, keeping those people with us and letting them know that we really appreciate their support during such a difficult time. In addition to that, we also want to make sure that we're really surveying folks. So it's been crucial for us during this time to make sure that when we were closed, making sure that our surveying was really top notch, that we were asking the right questions and being able to make decisions based on those responses. It's been incredible, even with limited capacity, that we've received in 2 weeks of being reopened, And parts of that were, and our attendance has gone up slowly as we've felt more comfortable and been able to react to the crowds that are coming in, that we've already collected 1,700 surveys in just 2 weeks. Most of those, I think our average rating for safety is like a 9.7 or 9.8. We're seeing that, the visitor experience is something that's super important to us. And Rachel can attest to that when she talks about training next. We really want to make sure the folks that we have on the front lines are really focusing on that visitor experience. It's where we found success as we've been able to grow our attendance from just over 1 million, 10 years ago to now 1.8 million annually. It's really been because of that visitor experience. So even though we've got all of these new policies and procedures and making a reservation before you come, that can really, kind of put a damper on the visitor experience. We're trying to make up for it in other ways.
Well, yeah, Matthew, go ahead.
Well, yeah, Jared. So one of the things I was just obviously you're talking about, you're juggling a lot of different objectives, right? We got the safety objective, we got this. I find it really fascinating that you invested in this kind of this thank you initiative, right? Like this, hey, welcome back, and really trying to express that. Have you seen anything in your survey results or in guest feedback on how they've taken that? Like, has it helped from a guest satisfaction standpoint of feeling welcomed back?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think kind of the strategy that we put behind it was to put it out there that we're really appreciative, but also we want this unifying message that it's your zoo. It's not our zoo, it's everybody's zoo. So when we're getting that feedback, we're seeing a lot of, we missed our zoo, we're happy to be home. Our members are super prideful. We have a Member HQ Facebook page, and people are on it every day talking about their zoo experience, about how happy they are that we're open, and the things that we put in place, they can really tell that we care and that we appreciate their support. So yeah, we're definitely seeing that in the surveys, and it's mostly because we're making it their zoo and not just ours.
I like that perspective, and I think we're going to have so much to talk about, so I don't even know how I'm going to bounce around a bunch. Rachel, we're going to hear from you a little bit. We're going to everyone's going to share their reopening stories, and then we'll talk about training. But in the video, one of the things that struck me the most, Rachel, is really just the staff sentiment, right? So we just talked about the guests, but what is the number one feeling and mood about the staff as they've reopened? I mean, I'm sure they're struggling not to give people high fives and all these things, but what impact is that having on your team right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have absorbed a lot of full-time staff right now from a lot of other departments, which I'm sure most of you listening have. So most of these folks normally are face-to-face with our visitors every day, even from 6 feet apart. They're not normally having those moments with our visitors. So them being able to be on the front lines is obviously a little different. It's a little challenging. It's outside their normal wheelhouse, but they're getting to share those experiences with visitors, maybe some of them for the first time. They're from admin, they're from finance, they're from maintenance. They're not normally doing that, but they're getting to scan folks in at the turnstiles. They're getting to see the support for the zoo in a different way. So we're getting a lot of that from our full-time folks that are helping us out. And we've also been able to bring back some seasonal staff, which I'll talk about a little later. Over the last few weeks, I feel like every couple of days I get the go-ahead to bring back a few more to help us, which has been amazing. But they are, like our visitors, this is their zoo. They are so prideful. They are so happy to be here to help us and to see even some of their favorite members again that they normally see every day, So it's been really overwhelming to see how happy they are to be here as well, not just our visitors.
Well, that's awesome. That's exciting news. And Jared, one more thing before we move on and share some more stories is that you guys have seen like a flood of your members booking the times, right? Like I think that Randy at the Detroit Zoo will mention this, but you guys are kind of opening slots for members kind of gingerly a little bit in advance, but I think you guys are changing the direction perhaps a little bit on that?
That's a moving target constantly. Again, with 68,000 plus member households, it's really difficult when you have folks that are used to visiting the zoo every week and suddenly they can't, and squeezing everybody in when you've got a total, and that's households, 68,000 households, so that's not individual memberships. So when you're looking at that, and we have a maximum capacity that's now grown to 6,000 a day, it's still really challenging to get folks in, especially we're taking into consideration, we're looking at numbers very closely, the members that aren't showing up, so we can make slight adjustments. We're allowing for little bits of walk-ups for those that, miss that communication. It's been challenging to, find that target and stay right on with it. There's lots of disappointment that's out there because everybody floods the system at the same time. We're using Qt that you guys have talked about before, as we've released officially today, all of July, all of August, and then the first week of September. So essentially, we've been able to communicate out, and we sent that communication out this morning, that the rest of the summer is open to make a reservation. And we've got over 1,000 people waiting right now just to get in to be able to make their reservation. And that's a mixture of folks that are going on to buy tickets and members that are wanting to visit at some point this summer. So,
oh, that's awesome.
We've had to make a lot of adjustments, but a lot of that is us listening to the feedback that we're receiving. There's some of it where folks go on the other side and they're really upset that they can't visit every day. But then there are just some families that want to visit once. It's difficult because, again, with 68,000 plus member households, it's really difficult to be able to squeeze everybody in when you're limiting your attendance to only 5,000 or 6,000 a day. So we feel like opening the rest of the summer is going to help that a bit. And then in turn, that also helps membership sales, right? Because there are some folks that are due to expire and they're waiting until they're able to visit to renew their membership. So that certainly helps as well. Every time that we make a little bump and adjustment where we release more tickets, we see a bump on the membership side as well. So it's funny how the two of those correlate.
Well, that's good information. And for that 65% of us who haven't reopened yet, I would say, get your communications in alignment. We've seen this happen all the time where as soon as you communicate that tickets are available or membership reservations are available, you're going to see traffic to your website. And regardless of what systems you're using out there, just be ready because it's difficult to get, 4,000 or 5,000 people through any web store experience. So what I've seen from the Cincinnati Zoo and from Phoenix and all you guys that are on the calls, be ready, be prepared, have some messaging. And what I love is that those fan groups, right? Those Facebook fan groups are there actually on social media saying, hey, just hang in there. You'll get a ticket soon. There's just a lot of demand. And I've really seen some really positive communications from those fan groups of your attraction. So it's really cool. Hey, we're going to shift gears. And Ida, I don't think we have you on video, but I think we can hear you. So we'll see if you can hear us. You're over at the Kansas City Zoo today.
I am.
Hi, Ida. I'm gonna show some slides, and we can't see you, but here you guys have reopened a little bit ago. When did you guys reopen? It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been over a month now. We
actually
opened on May the 16th. So about 5 to 6 weeks now. So.
Wow. Tell us about the store. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well. We've actually been able to increase our capacity. We increased that about 2 weeks ago now, which has really helped, especially getting kind of like the Cincinnati Zoo. We have a high number of pass holders, membership accounts. And so being able to increase those numbers so we can get more of them in and be able to get them in a couple of days a week versus once a week is also helpful, and we're seeing a lot that want to do that. So we've been able to, we had to kind of start out, we have kind of 2 sections to our zoo. We're a little over 200 acres, but our tram will take people down to our African exhibit, and that one we opened as we opened, and then when we opened capacity up again 2 weeks ago, then we went ahead and we opened up our train at the same time. So that has really helped. The appeal for most of our rides is that train. It's the ones that all the little kids love to ride. So that one's been super helpful as well. But Kansas City Zoo, kind of this is like our front entrance.
That first period, we had, stanchions everywhere, people outside trying to, get our members and our visitors in through what was kind of a mess at the front there. So we've got people that are watching for our guest relations, since it's an indoor spot, to make sure that we don't have too many people entering and going through. And then at our entrance gate, we have, normally we'd operate with probably 2 greeters on, a pretty busy day. Now we're operating with 3 to 4 and getting people through the gates in those 15-minute time periods. Like most zoos and attractions, we are opening all of our employees will wear masks, and then we're having them scan their own tickets and everything on scanners, which has been a new development for every visitor that's been coming. So
this little shot here, I don't know if I'll try to zoom in, but yeah, you can almost see. It looks like you guys just went with just a little stanchion here, and the scanner's right there, and everybody kind of knows what to do. They're waiting in line, and they just scan their own membership card and come on in. And that's working pretty well for you guys?
It's been doing pretty well. So the main thing is our members are so used to just scanning their membership cards and walking through, not having to do reservations and that kind of thing. So retraining the brain and retraining the member on the new process for all of that, as well as all of our guests. So we are very much mainly if you want to come to the zoo that day, you walk up to our front ticket windows and you purchase your tickets and you head on. And now that's not really that much of an option. We have very little walk-up tickets available, if any at all, in any certain time period. So.
Wow, that's really good information. I've noticed, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about training, but how you guys are protecting your staff is very unique, where I've seen so many places. Let me see if I can't jump to this membership one here. I've seen so many places put, the stanchions, the plexiglass kind of mounted down. You guys have pretty much gone with hanging the plexiglass in almost all areas. Is that right?
We have. So we were, here's the membership tent and everything. So every morning we take those out and we put them up, and then every evening we wash them and then sanitize them and then take them down. And then the same thing with our greeter area. And that, so those are our mobile stations there with those. We weren't really able, since most of this is, the tent's been there for probably 2-3 years now, but it's not really a permanent fixture type of thing. It was, designed and then placed there versus built in with the zoo. So there's that piece we've been adding. We, added this plexiglass there to our guest relations area as well, and everything like that. So.
Yeah, this is interesting too, to see it just hanging, and I think it's something that's nice. It's not overly permanent. You can take it down, you can wash it, you can replace them pretty easily.
Exactly.
I actually like the idea that it has the space underneath for maybe passing materials that you can do safely or whatnot underneath. It's a good feature.
Yeah, for the most part, so we have our scanner there that will, turn so that they can scan, their own phones with their passes or tickets on it, or those kinds of things. But, very little do we touch. But if we need to pass, tickets that they're picking up and that kind of thing, it was, defeating the point of putting up these guards if you were just going to be passing stuff around them, through them. So having that underneath spot still gives that sense of safety and everything for the guest and for our employees as well.
So we had a question come through about just did you guys locally source the plexiglass? Is it something that your manufacturer's team built, or do you know how you guys acquired the protection glass?
I do not know that information. I'd be more than happy to find that piece out. I know that we had to kind of buy it in bulk. So we had several areas. What you see is just kind of the first piece. We have 4 spots in our gift shop that also have plexiglass up. Our bistro, which is like our main cafe in our front building, also has 2 to 3 of those. And then we've got them, and they're all, just the hanging ones as temporary and that kind of thing. So.
That's really good information. And like most places, you guys have done a great job with your signage. It's fun. We've seen a lot of these marks on the ground, stay safe, keep 6 feet apart. And it's also great for people that love signage that it does seem like people are really paying attention to signs these days. That is not normal in our industry, but it seems like it's working most of the time. But I actually also wanted to point out this sign, this floor sticker. It's a good incorporation of a line and the markings. I just kind of liked it because I noticed in a lot of your pictures when they're on the ground, it's working really well. It's people are on message. They're staying behind the line, and you're using them at your access control points, but you're also using them throughout at the queue for the gift shop and whatnot too.
Definitely, and even in like our queue lines for our rise attractions, if they're getting in line for food, to get into our gift shop area, all of that too.
Now, this is something else I want to bring up, and it's really, we're going to talk a little bit about staffing, but this is a situation where I don't know if it's because of staffing or because you just can't do the show, but this is basically you're not able to do certain shows because you don't want people to be congregating next to each other. I think that's why you're choosing not to do the experiences. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So we have, in terms of shows, we have what we call we have a bird show, and then we have a mixed species show, and then our sea lion show. So for all of those, they're all in, they're some of our most attended chats, and so we want to make sure that we don't have crowds gathering, and then it's the same thing for like our keeper chats. To kind of we didn't want to take chats away completely, because that's not how you get across, what type of animal that is and the conservation message behind it. We wanted to make sure that you could still get that learning experience when you came to the zoo. So at each of those locations, we do have those QR codes posted, but then we also have them in our map. So like it's a whole page feature with just our chat time, where our chat times normally would be. It's now the QR codes with the different animal chats.
And Ida, that seems like a really efficient and easy way to kind of make all that content available, right? You didn't have to develop a mobile application and all this heavy stuff. Like, are you leveraging kind of like YouTube to bring those chats alive?
Yes, exactly. So we have many different like animal cameras that people can watch. A penguin cam is one of the most prevalent that people watch, along with our like polar bear cam and orangutan cam. And so those are all already on YouTube. We have our own YouTube page, and so we were just like, yeah, we'll just put chats on there too. So basically the QR code is just a link to that YouTube video.
That's really great.
Awesome, great. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, I want to be here for the rest of the day because I want to hear everybody. We'll come back to you in a bit, Ida. Thank you for all that information. And one of the things, Ida, that I'm most excited to talk about after we talk about training and best practice is I asked you to take a bunch of pictures behind the scenes this morning, and you did a great job. And I want to show a lot of those great pictures of like, this is what it looks like. This is how we're doing this. So stay tuned, everybody, because we just have some really just simple behind the scenes. This is what it looks like back of house during COVID reopening. So cool stuff. Janelle, let's talk about you guys. Now, you guys have a great story because you just recently reopened the zoo, and you're actually moving into your not so busy time period because you can get pretty warm. But you actually were able to open a little bit earlier with your drive-in exhibit. So you guys have been open with your drive through the zoo, which is going amazing. You're going to share that. But you then recently just reopened the actual zoo for guests on the property on foot, right?
Yes. On May 8th, we opened Cruise the Zoo, which was a drive-through experience through majority of the park. and it was wildly, massively successful. We sold out the first 4 days in like probably 3 days, to the point that we had to add additional days and increase the capacity. And it's been so successful, we're doing it still, even though we are open to foot traffic now, one weekend a month through August. But it's guests and members were just so excited to be able to come back to the zoo in whatever way we were able to present to them. So, you know, it was a lot of, hey, let me scan your ticket through your car window. But they would roll their window down and be like, oh, we're so excited. We can't wait to get the kettle corn. We can't get to get this. We wanted kettle corn so bad. And but it's been really great. Beyond that, we did just reopen to our members for foot traffic on the 13th. We did set a capacity of about 2,500. And as we're seeing in the comments here, make sure you have yourself prepped for that because we crashed our site that first day. We actually crashed a little bit when we launched Cruise the Zoo as well. But I think I spent 3 hours listening to over 100 voicemails of guests trying to help them buy tickets for things. So just be really prepared for that because it will happen. And if you're on Galaxy, communicate with your BFM, make sure you have everything all set and ready to go. But fortunately, we have a really great IT director, Jeremy Bound, and he got on the horn right away and got it fixed as quickly as he could. But foot traffic, we went with cones. So I think some of you guys might have seen my post about it, but it is a sea of cones. They're all over the place, but they're great. When we first opened, we did not require masks, only for staff. But then the Wednesday after we opened and then the Friday after we opened, it became a city mandate and a county mandate. So now we do require masks. So everyone 6 and under or 5 and under don't have to have a mask, but everyone above does. So we're doing a lot of that communication. But opening honestly has been really great, really quick. Like I said it a couple of times in a couple different groups that I'm in, that all the buildup is there, and then you open and it's kind of like, that's it. Like, oh, okay. But we averaged a little bit higher than we normally do this time of year in our first week. We have seen a dip this week, but it's also probably because we're in the 110-degree weather now, and also the spike in cases has gone up in our area as well. But we do have lots of signage, lots of, you know, all the things that everyone else is doing. But, you know, it's been really great. Members are really excited to be here. Staff is really excited to have everyone here. So we're just going to keep trucking along and see how things go. But yeah, it's kind of the same things that Jared was saying. We do post-visit surveys. We get to kind of the same results of, you know, it's not the zoo's fault, but the guests aren't social distancing, and that's their big concern. But they recognize that it's not something we can manage fully. We can just kind of tell people, hey, can you step back, or just a reminder the markers are there for a reason, kind of thing. But it's been really great.
Yeah, there's so many chats and comments coming up that are really pertinent, and I wanted to ask you something, Janelle. We had a little chat yesterday, and you know, you in Phoenix are one of the only outdoor attractions that has reopened. That's an outdoor attraction, but you work with a lot of organizations that are indoors, and they are going through completely different challenges. What advice can you give and share with the community here that's in attendance about how things are going in your area, indoor/outdoor?
Well, a lot of them are focusing more on, you know, how many people can we have in the building at a time, and they knew their capacity with regular opening and being standard procedures, but they're kind of struggling with what it is now. Our science center just recently reopened, but they're doing guided tours And so you can't free flow through the Science Center anymore and touch all the tactile things. You literally have to be with a guide the entire time. So that's kind of a new thing for them. We're sharing a lot of ideas back and forth about whether or not volunteers should be allowed to come back, and if so, what capacity and what kind of things do we require of the volunteers. The zoo itself has not gone to volunteers yet, but that was some of the conversation we had yesterday with the local attractions that, you know, it's hard because they're in a building. They're requiring masks more than we were, and now that it's mandated, we're all kind of excited that it's mandated because now it's consistent. And so our local community members can say, I know I have to wear a mask going there. So.
And I think that's a great segue. I mean, Jessica just had a question here in our panel, like about additional training for wearing the mask. And it seems that it's a very difficult situation that everyone's been put in. And I'll let anybody on the panel join in. But you know, Janelle, had you previously been teaching your staff? What training did you give your staff if someone wasn't properly social distancing or wasn't wearing a mask? And I know, Deborah, you're going to touch on this as well, but Janelle, what did you guys do at the zoo before the mandate came through?
For us, for staff, we were always required to wear them since we opened for Cruise the Zoo. For me, as supervisor, we would have morning meetings all the time, every shift, free shift meetings, and say, hey, just a reminder, the zoo's policy is this for staff. And then throughout the day, if I saw someone that was not wearing their mask properly, it was under their nose, not, you know, down around their neck, I'd say, hey, I don't believe that's the way we talked about how you're supposed to wear your mask. And we do a lot of positive reinforcement about it as much as we can, of like, hey, you know, the meme about the pants and the, you know, all that stuff. We've talked about that. We try to make it fun. But you know,
I think you're referring to this, right? Is this what you're referring to?
Yeah. Yes. Under your it does nothing. It's not really protecting yourself. Yeah. You can use your shirt if necessary.
Yeah, Deborah's showing that. I went to a place yesterday, and I was completely upset about my experience because the person serving me food was doing this. I was like, you know.
Yeah, we definitely have to do some reminders with some of our staff, but for the most part, everyone gets it. So, but now that we are mandating the mask, we've empowered our staff to kind of voice their comfortableness of like, hey, when you're near me, you have to have your mask on, but as soon as you walk away from me, you can take it off because we are an outdoor exhibit space. So being direct, but also friendly about it, like, hey, let's keep each other safe in our 6 feet bubble, and then you can take it off as soon as you're past me. So.
There was a question about the heat. I mean, it's hot.
Yeah. So far, it's been okay. We do give our staff lots and lots of breaks. We have a designated breaker who goes around constantly, and that's literally all they do is just give breaks all day. And some of our areas are indoor with air conditioning, so those folks are okay, but we do have a few that are outside and just constantly giving breaks, saying, hey, you need a drink. Something that we instill in our staff as well is keep an eye on your fellow coworker and your guests. If they look like they're in distress, help them out, call somebody. Just because whether it's nothing or not, we want to make sure that that person's being looked at. And that's just kind of what we do here anyway before mask. But now with masks, obviously it's a little bit harder because their face is covered so they can't breathe as well.
Great information. I think we're going to keep talking around training in a few minutes. So I'm going to jump over to Randy at Detroit, and then we'll just have like a training free for all. So if anybody wants to talk about best practices or get your questions ready, we're gonna do that after we share a little bit from Randy in Detroit. So hi, Randy, how are you?
I'm great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So yes, for us, I share a lot of the same sentiments as my colleagues. It's been really quite a unique experience. I think we talked about it yesterday a little bit in preparation, that it really just is almost like a grand reopening, and how you can capture that spirit and involve your employees and your members and your guests as they return, and just make that positive vibe all around, especially under times that are very uncertain. So for us, being in Oakland County here in Michigan, we were definitely a primary hotbed for the infection rate, and then our membership base out of the Tri-County area was also significantly affected. So we had a lot of considerations around optics and what made sense for return and how sensitive people were going to be for safety. We wanted that welcome, fun vibe when people returned, but based on some of our pre-surveys, pre-opening surveys, we found that safety was really just the biggest thing people wanted to know. What were we going to do? How was it going to happen? How was it going to be safe for their families? So while we tried to have fun with the messaging, we still did a lot of messaging based around what the expectations were to still experience everything the best way possible for all. And really to also focus on the safety for the animals as well. We opened on June 8th. We did members only for the first 4 days, and then opened up to reservations for members, of course, as well as timed entry by half hour for those purchasing tickets. We tried to have fun, like I said, with a couple of elements. Our mascots, we have them out every day, socially distanced, of course. They're doing a fun little photobomb experience as people walk in to just kind of create that element of fun and excitement up at the front as everybody comes into the main gates. Similar to others, we have put this call to action messaging throughout the entire entryway, throughout the zoo. It's woven throughout our campaign that we've posted on our websites. We did a lot of work in our reopening task force on communication as well. Similar methods of the ways that we sent out emails and messaging to our members. We did blasts to everyone who had participated in our public events in the past as well, just getting them hyped up for the excitement that we would be reopening soon. We spent a lot of time also looking into ways that we could connect people with what was happening at the zoo, not only while they were here, but also while they were away. We recognized that there were quite a few people who were possibly still just not going to feel safe coming, even though they wanted to. So when we worked on developing those communications, we utilized our ZooTrex resource, which is our electronic mobile mapping system that allows us to also integrate a lot of our content that we do for our vitamin Z virtual experiences. So any of the habitats that we didn't have open, or the fact that we decided not to do keeper talks, or anywhere we wouldn't have a docent normally, we would go ahead and put this content into our ZooTrex, and it was a great way to help people connect and see ways that they could plan their day before they came, and then also take away what they saw through the zoo as an experience and revisit it and look at it as a memory, or actually just go through and take a look at it even if they weren't here. That content is constantly changing and updating along with everything else that we found we have needed to be flexible with. The biggest thing being, of course, our member reservations. We have found that because we were so cautious in our opening process, we were very conservative with our numbers, stayed below 25% of our average capacity to open for a little while. We're now around our 35% of our average capacity. But that definitely puts a strain on our member reservation system. We also crashed on our first day open and had to work through some significant workarounds with the Gateway team to fix that as quickly as possible, which was amazing. But with our member reservations, we're finding a significant no-show rate because, similar to what we've already talked about, obviously people are making multiple reservations to try and come and utilize their membership the way that they're used to using it. But unfortunately, even with those that are putting in those multiple reservations, they weren't communicating when they weren't coming. So we've changed the way we've communicated that to guests. We've put other calls to action to our membership base, explaining that to them. One of the things that has been a saving grace for us has been our call center support. For all of you getting ready to open, I can't tell you enough how much you might want to plan on ways to boost the morale of your team, because they just are going to be overloaded with information, questions, complaints. But we deployed actually any of our events team that was still on staff, utilized some of our group sales staff and some of our administrative staff in our call center, and started them out with some early on training, which I'll talk about a little bit later, to have them ready to support our call center, just because we're slowly bringing back our staff, but we're not fully staffed right now. So that's one way that we've helped support that process. We've also attached 2 more people to the responsibilities of social media responses, and a number of people are now handling all of our email communications as well. We've pretty much tripled who has done that compared to what we would normally do in the past. With our indoor spaces, we weren't open to indoor spaces for the first 2 weeks. We just opened those recently. Masks are required indoors. In Michigan, it's been a little tough here. Even though it is governor mandated that masks are worn in all public indoor spaces, a lot of our guests are really struggling with that expectation, and that we're experiencing some of that pushback. Same training is in place here as far as the best ways to approach it and what to say and how to do that. We've had people push back regards to the fact that they have a medical condition, for example. We've put a system in place for that, where if people at least identify themselves as having a medical condition, we've provided a wristband as a way for them to present that when they get to those spaces. And so some of our buildings, we are allowing for that if they have given us that feedback. That helps us with some of our guests who have cognitive disabilities, as well as breathing concerns and such. So those are some of the things that we've continued to adjust to as we have worked our way through our member and guest feedback. We too have been doing our surveys, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Of course, you have a few challenges here and there, but really everyone has been just so grateful to have an experience that they can do with their family and feel safe doing it. And to finally be able to do something that feels at least a little bit more normal than what had been happening for the last 4 months. So with that being said, we really just hope that everyone continues to enjoy the vibe that we've put out there, and the team has just been so happy to be back as well, welcoming guests and feeling like they can see their friends again as well here at work. So.
Yeah, and I love some of the messaging that we're going to talk about, keep the pack safe is one of your messages.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll show that, because internally, everyone's excited. They come back to work, but you want to keep them safe. You brought something up, and Shelby Wan, she's from Capilano Suspension Bridge, had mentioned about the reopening. And I know this chatter is happening in the chat, but one of the things I'm learning right now is be ready for the onslaught of demand. Everyone's excited. The calls, the emails, the arrivals. It just what Shelby had said. Just please be ready. Double the staff when you reopen, because you're going to need it. And it sounds, Randy, you're saying that. Janelle, you mentioned that. Rachel and Ida, you both have chimed in as well. So it's really interesting to hear that perspective. And Deb, I want to talk to you about getting the staff ready, right? And we did a poll, which is great information. Matthew, why don't you share a little bit about this information about getting your staff ready and what you've been doing?
Yeah, so we heard that, the overwhelming amount of folks are doing some training that's specific to COVID-19, and most everybody is doing, something between 1 to 4 hours. I'm assuming it's probably closer on the one end of the frame, right? Like making sure that we have kind of that specific content available. So one of the key things I'm taking away from this is that, hey, we got to make sure that we train and we get the message out. And that's because while we're communicating probably in our marketing and our website, we need to make sure that we're living and breathing that same thing that we're saying. So having some specific training for that seems to be one of the keys for all of the attractions. And most of that content is actually being delivered in a mixture of both in-person and maybe a virtual delivery of it. Obviously, I think to the point of keeping your pack safe, if we're in person in a classroom, we might be having more challenges of social distancing. So delivering that in on the job or virtual ways, that mixture that makes it right for your attraction appears to be one of the key things that you as attendees shared. And then also we're seeing that the roles and responsibilities of our staff members are changing a little bit. Over half of y'all have indicated that are attending today that, hey, we've added additional responsibilities related to safety and security. So we've heard that a little bit in kind of the ensuring folks are wearing masks and social distancing and the roles that our staff members play in ensuring that safe environment. We have seen, about a quarter of y'all have said, hey, we've kind of consolidated roles. In the past, we might have had 2 different jobs, and they were done by 2 different people, but now they're being done by 1 person. And I think that certainly is one of the key things as we're trying to reopen profitably and in a way that we can still meet our mission at our attractions that we've had to do. And then there's about a third of the folks are cross-training, so making sure that you're aware, your staff member can be used in a different capacity. So I think we heard about some of those folks maybe stepping into the call center and getting some of those responsibilities. And then, as Jared had talked about a little bit, is maybe that we're also, there's about a quarter of folks that are also kind of beefing up that guest experience or that visitor experience and making sure folks understand and feel appreciated when they're returning back to these attractions and helping us out. But obviously, all of that comes into making sure that the staff is prepared for that and making sure that they're effectively trained.
Yeah, and Deb, the perfect segue, right? Because you've been working with organizations like these zoos for a long time, but now you've been asked to get them ready for reopening under completely different circumstances. Like we had said, it is like a reopening, like a whole. It's like you're opening from scratch, right? So why don't you just take us through your learnings, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll kind of go back around and let us see how people are putting this into action.
I want to dive right into that. And first and foremost, we talked about this yesterday, but as Janelle said and Randy referenced, it really is like you're opening for the first time. You take your playbook and you completely throw it out the window, and you are reevaluating everything from your staffing. I just want to share, for those I haven't worked with, I worked with most of the people on this panel, but for those that I haven't worked with, I work with a lot of zoos and aquariums and museums across the country. So I've been getting snapshots from many different organizations that are at various points of reopening or reinventing themselves. For example, like Phoenix Zoo, who I was thrilled that not only that Phoenix Zoo went to a drive-through cruise at the zoo, but that you're realizing now that when it's 120 degrees, you can still cruise at the zoo and generate revenue on a day where you otherwise would have had less than 100 guests. So I'm really excited about, out of everything bad comes something good conversation about how many have had the opportunity to take a really hard look at things like, Janelle joked yesterday, it only took a pandemic for us to finally maximize our guest throughput. So I think that that's an important thing. I just wanted to touch on these things to say, because I don't know where every single person who's listening to this conversation is at on the spectrum, just so we're dumping more resources onto our site on the COVID-19 page, but I strongly recommend the Gateway resources page, the Blue Loop resources page, and for those who are IAPA's opened up some free resources pages because you have to evaluate all these things all over again. The most consistent thing that I'm seeing is people bringing back staff that are more functional and cross-trainable and more have more availability to be able to, if you're bringing back someone who used to work in guest services and now works in events, so now you're bringing them back to guest services to cover that role. So as far as training is concerned, a lot of my teams, with very few exceptions, the staff is still the same staff. Some of them have been repurposed for these new roles. But a lot of the teams have the same core staff. There's been very little new hiring And for those who have had that little bit of new hiring, a lot of teams have also streamlined their training so that it's just the bare bones. What do you need to do to be able to do this job? But that being said, everything from going from selling tickets at the gate to an online ticketing, a reservation system, including especially with larger sites with member households and lots of member households. I'm really appreciative of how many of you had said your site is crashed on the first day, because that's another consistent yes. Be prepared for the onslaught of calls and traffic to your website. So just being prepared for what's about to happen. And I also want to say I'm just so lucky because everyone I work with is smart. So everybody is being able to adjust. As Randy was just talking about, how many times you're readjusting. You think you're going one way, and then you're paying attention to what your guests are saying and doing, and you're adjusting on the fly to what needs to happen next. But that being said, within that whole thing, the most important thing I can say about training and preparing for a guest experience in this situation is keeping your eye on your mission and your vision, which for all of us has something to do with guest experience or species survival, or why zoos and aquariums are so important, or why that guest engagement is so important. So keeping your eye on what's our mission, what's our message, and then figuring out how to make sure we don't lose that in the reopening process. So for sure, thanks for nice cue up on the slide there, Randy. Everyone has implemented some sort of new health and safety training, and it is completely different site to site. Every site has its own unique set of circumstances. So again, I want to reference the resources I've already mentioned, but I'm going to be putting more up this week as more and more come in. But really just evaluating what do we need to clean and how do we need to clean it? What do we need to keep up? What can we open versus what do we need to keep closed? And how are we communicating these messages to the guests about social distancing and about wash your hands frequently and the what to expect before they come. So again, there's operational retraining when it comes to cleaning procedures and how are you handling a particular ride or attraction. But also the communication itself is the same fabulous for all of these people. It's the same fabulous using your morning meetings, using your pre-shift meetings, communicating with the guests, your staff every single day, and then getting the feedback from your guests as you've been doing with all of these great surveys. And you're going to see what's coming back into you. You're going to know what you need to adjust as far as your communication. And just as far as training in general, just remembering the golden rules of training, that you're asking someone to wear a mask now for an entire shift, and it's a new habit. So just remembering the time that it takes for someone to form a new habit and the 18 to 24 reminders that some people are going to need in order to keep that in place. I wanted to just mention, someone had mentioned in the Q&A a question about how do you handle getting someone to wear a mask all day. I think Janelle had said about having a breaker that goes around and gives people a 5-minute, 10-minute timeout with the mask off. Just being conscious of what are my staff needs in order for them to be able to do what I'm expecting them to do. And again, the lesson up front about properly preparing your guests for what to expect, because there's a lot of guest retraining in this whole process. So members that are used to coming every single morning just for their walk through the zoo as an exercise, it's not that same cup of tea anymore. They're going to have to make a reservation. They're going to have tickets. So it's guest retraining and staff retraining at the same time. And I think that's also very important. I'd like to go to what's number 3 look like. The next slide, Randy.
I've been typing because I was trying to tell people, like, there's so many things I want to pause on for a second here about what you said. So staff rehires and new hires. And I think that's something really important. You had said, everyone's working with such great people and there's a lot of pivoting going on. And what are the best practices to pivot? Yeah. And obviously, the daily huddle is super important right now because your staff is learning something new every day. And it takes a while for that to hit home. But I also want to bring up something that's interesting. And Randy Hamilton and I were having a conversation, And Randy comes out of like the hospitality hotel industry, and she was saying that it's really important to find those people on your team and bring them into an area where they can best succeed now. So that person might be an event person that you brought over from like Marriott or Hilton, and they're very good at planning these large events that unfortunately you might not have anymore. Repurposing that type of person that is used to the peaks and valleys of being in that industry versus traditionally in many of our attractions, if you're a museum or a zoo, we often have pretty flat line attendance patterns sometimes, right? There's peaks and valleys, but this kind of like craziness of an explosion of people is not in a lot of people's like attraction DNA. They don't really know how to deal with that. So I really want to say to focus on staff rehiring and new hires and training is to look for those people that are built for this. And Randy, that's kind of what we were talking about what you were seeing. You were having to pivot people around because of that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It forces people to have to rethink a lot of things, and sometimes because we've done things a certain way for so long in this type of environment, to think out of the box on the fly is not everybody's forte. And when you come from, the hotel industry especially, or the restaurant industry, where things change so quickly and economic times have been so tough in that industry historically, you do a lot more with less in those environments.
Yeah, it's really something that just I was kind of connecting all the dots, and it's like really using the staff the best you can. And then kind of continuing your conversation, Deb, that's kind of what you're saying, is that you need to kind of find those people, work with those people, build them up, and really condition them to be ready to prepare for this new experience of like what's completely different now.
Yes, and I don't know if we have anybody on today's webinar from Jacksonville Zoo, but I just want to shout out, for example, using their safety and security team more in that greeter, ambassador, host, welcome pivot point. But they have so many great people. Lorenzo's the first one that came to mind, where he's just so super friendly and engaging and appropriate and professional and really just well represents the organization. So when guests are coming up, if it's an issue of handling anything from what mask wearing to whatnot, you've got someone who's capable of having that conversation comfortably. And there's no question for the hundreds of people who are in sites that have masks, your staff wearing masks, your guests may or may not be wearing masks, and as Janelle just said, this is changing. This changes every day. Who's required to wear masks and who's not required to wear masks. So for those who have to have that mask conversation, one of the best things to do is just to get your staff comfortable with saying, hey, just to remind you, at this point, you need to have your mask on in order to go in, or hi, welcome back. It's just that how friendly, professional, appropriate is your staff being when they have to have that conversation. And we all know there's going to be that 1 in a million that are just going to be that person, your guest, that's going to give your staff a hard time. Just to prepare them as best you can for that guest, get them to turn them over to you, and then let them move on to the next one. It's the same guest service, guest experience that you're always looking for when guests are coming in your door. And I also just want to say again about how important it is to really treat this like a new opening, a new experience. Several of you mentioned it, but even more and more of my teams have said, Cleveland comes to mind, Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, about how they took the opportunity to have their first guest experience. They called it a fundraising or donation. And so when people were coming in, guests were coming in, they were so excited to have an experience where they could get out of their house and do something and feel safe and feel good, do a drive-through at the zoo. And when they treated it as a donation and a fundraiser, people's expectations were a little bit lower. and they could still generate revenue and still give something of value to the guests. So the guests were happy to have something of value. I don't think anyone expects 100% of 100% in the middle of a pandemic. And I think that just managing guest expectations and just doing everything you can to tell them we're doing everything we can is what makes that difference.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think using that idea of a donation is great, and or a member preview is also really great. Hey, Rachel, I want you to share a little bit about what you guys did to prepare and reopening, because I think you guys have done some great learnings. And then obviously, Janelle, I want you to jump in, and Ida, we have a little over 10 minutes here, but I want to get as much information out to share how you guys accomplished all of these trainings.
Yeah, for sure. So we probably, like a lot of people, started with an all-staff update, and that was held in a webinar kind of scenario similar to this, where all folks could learn about new COVID precautions as well as any changed emergency procedures. Because being at a zoo, there are a lot of things that we still need to do. Say if an animal were to get out or something fun like that. So we needed to update people on those changes to the policies, because those are obviously huge for the safety of our zoo every day, not just during COVID time. And we also gave them updates on things that were going to change in their daily life, where they park, how they have lunch, because they can't go to any of our food locations right now, that they need to wear masks, things like that. And they were able to ask questions in real time from folks all over the zoo that were on this panel. And based on their specialty, they could answer the questions. So this was used and recorded so people who couldn't make it in real time could also watch it. And it's also now being distributed as we bring people back online. It's mandatory for them to watch before their first shift. After we did this, then we did one-on-one staff training for specific roles in our area. And that was based on everybody's learning style, because everybody learns differently. So we did small group training in 2 days when we found out that we would be reopening for our employee opening. We did that here at the front. We walked people through for 2 days straight in like 30, 45-minute blocks, just so that the groups were small enough where they could also touch the equipment if they needed to and they felt comfortable before their first day. We also distributed written guides that we worked together to build as a team, which we just updated our normal seasonal training for that and distributed that to them so that they would have the basics that they needed to do the role. But then we put a really big emphasis on the importance of visitor experience, because like everyone has said, people are so excited to come back through our gates, right? And they're so excited to see us. And we still want to make sure that we are delivering that, what they expect, that experience that they expect at the gate. Even if they can't see us smiling with our mouths, they can see us smiling with our eyes and with our hands waving at them if we can't high five them, or just welcoming them with our voice and making sure that they feel happy and that they know that we're excited to see them. So we have taught our folks who are helping us on the front lines to assume positive intent with our visitors, especially if they were worried about any escalated visitor issues, which Deb touched on, with folks having security people at the front for not wearing masks and stuff like that. We've had them go in with an open mind and an open heart as they're welcoming folks back, and to let them know that we're always here to support them if they were to need that.
Sometimes I can't hit the unmute button fast enough. I've been staying on mute, but great information. I wrote down assume positive intent, and I think when you talk a little bit about the security, and I think we had mentioned this previously in a webinar, it was maybe at the World War II Museum. It is kind of interesting when you task that security officer in a fun, positive way to remind people to wear that mask, and it's disarming. It's assuming positive intent, and it's saying, hey, we're here to protect ourselves, so that security role takes on a little different meaning when you're reminding people to wear masks in a fun way. So, Janelle, I'm sure you're going to echo very similar kind of conversations of how you guys have handled this over in Phoenix?
Yeah, it was basically the exact same thing. We did bring in, we absorbed some of our event staff for special events and social events because we're not utilizing them in that capacity right now. And we're kind of in the unique situation where at least half of them have worked for me previously, so they already kind of knew the expectations of guest service and experience. So the ones that didn't, they got a little bit more hands-on training, one-on-one, but it's all been basically on-the-job training. The only thing that we really changed in terms of ticket sales was we were doing everything through order entry and gateway now, and that was a more labor-intensive process for us because we'd never used it in this capacity before. But it's really all been essentially the same processes we've done before, but we now just treat every day as a special event where everyone's required to have a ticket. So we trained people on how to communicate the change to members when they show up with no ticket and what options they have in that moment. Like if you step over to this window, they can make a reservation for you, or you can go on your phone and do it right now and we can get you in. And then educating both our staff and our guests on all of those things. Our HR department did send out some information both prior to opening for Cruise the Zoo, but also, again, once we opened to foot traffic that, you know, same thing, smile with your eyes, exaggerate your movements in a really positive and encouraging way, wave and say hello, be genuine when you're talking to people, and really thank them for coming back. In our post-visit surveys for Member Weekend, that was probably mentioned about 70% of the time that staff was genuinely excited that guests were coming back. Because we were, you know, we've been lonely too, not just the animals. Human interaction is really important. So, you know, using laughter to express positive attitudes, make jokes with people. I like to point out masks when I see them on little kids, and I'm like, oh my God, I love your mask. And where did you get that? I want that one too. It's got sparkly unicorns, you know, that kind of thing. But something we have had to work with our staff in particular was being very mindful of tone, because sarcasm is lost because they can't see your face. So they can't see that you're making a joke, and so they can take it the wrong way. And then just being really creative with how we greet. HR said, you know, do the foot shake, air hugs. I do air hugs all the time because there's some people here at the zoo that I love to hug and I can't hug them, so I get very sad because I'm a hugger. But you know, there's also the classic wave, hey. So just being really positive and upbeat. Something we remind all of our staff all the time is it doesn't matter if that guest has been here before. It's brand new today. It's brand new for everyone, not just us, but it is for the guests as well. And to not beat yourself up if you do something wrong. It's a new process, so you're going to make a mistake. We're not going to have everything figured out from the day the gates open. It's a learning process for everyone. All we can do is make notes, make changes, and move forward. And utilizing your staff to give you that feedback and move forward with their ideas. So that's kind of what we've been doing.
Great info. And by the way, everybody, we're probably going to reserve about 10 minutes, and I don't know if the panelists can stay on, but we're probably going to we're going to go over by 10 minutes because we want to share a little bit more information. If we have any last-minute questions, so we're going to go 10 minutes from now so we can start the countdown. Randy, probably similar information, but some of the perspective I know what you were dealing with, you and I had a little chat, is you actually had a lot more like of I would say repurposing people in some of these areas. So this was very new to lots of people, aside from the fact that time ticketing is new. And Janelle, the joke that we were talking about was like, you've always wanted to use time ticketing, but a pandemic had to happen for you guys to start doing these things. And so there is opportunity throughout these periods of time. So if you are in the 4 to 9 weekers, meaning that you're not opening for 4 to 9 week, you've got quite a bit of runway to put some changes in, whether it's technological changes, staffing changes, training changes. But Randy, what was different for you in your experiences during this reopening?
Certainly. So one of the first things we did, because our timeline that we thought we would have changed very dramatically when our governor lifted the stay-at-home order earlier than anticipated. So we went from about a 3-week lead time to about a 4-day lead time on certain things. So we tried to repurpose a lot of our own tools that we already had to make them more applicable for the situation. One of the things we did do, as we have brought staff back in phases, is their first day is experiencing what the guest experiences. It's the very first thing they do, so that they get the understanding of the look and the feel. It's the best way to get them to be trained on the guest-facing side of things. When we first opened, we did a soft open that we invited our very active board and committee members along with staff and families, so that they got a day in the park as well. And we took actually survey feedback from that, and we use that for our training materials. Every day we do a DZ daily that's communicated to our operations team that has certain updates in it that includes, any changes to buildings, what might be open or closed, feedback from the day before from the call center, things we need to focus on. And there's training materials and safety focuses in those dailies as well. And we also post that information on our water tower intranet, and we've been utilizing our intranet for some of that communication for team members that haven't necessarily returned back on property yet, but are still working from a remote location. A lot of our training was done online, and we updated that opening FAQ. The other thing we have is a pocket concierge that we give our staff. So especially with a lot of my team members that are not used to working in front-facing positions, we had a little daily breakdown they could pull out of their pocket, and it shared what information was pertinent. So it was a quick overview training for them, so that they could have information on the fly that they might not always have at the ready, since they're not doing it every day.
I would say for those of us, and Janelle's going to smile when I say this, but for those of us that were at Disney at one time in our lives, that pocket concierge, and Universal does them as well. It's certainly super important to be for
Randy,
that quick changes.
Yep. One thing I would also add, we just started bringing our volunteers back, and they had so many questions. And so we started doing Zoom chats with our volunteer team, myself and our volunteer coordinator, to really help answer a lot of questions and make sure that they were prepared and comfortable with their return. We're slowly launching the volunteer team back into the zoo, but that's the other thing that's really helped us get them prepared.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because Sarah, our friend Sarah from the Pacific Northwest, is just saying, hey, what are you guys using? And it seems like Zoom is very popular, WebEx, and Jared, you guys use GoToWebinar. This tool that we're using is Cisco Web Meetings, I believe. Is that technically the right term?
This is a WebEx event.
WebEx event. There you go. So yeah, it's a variety of tools that are out there. I've heard some people even use Facebook, for video conferencing. So there are a lot of good tools out there for everyone. And you're a good perspective on the volunteers, because some volunteers aren't going to be receptive to those training tools, or they're not going to have the ability to get them all together at once. So Ida, thank you so much for sharing some photos at the Kansas City Zoo. So what I asked you was a little bit more, let's look at what's happening behind the scenes, right? And I love the mask, and Janelle, you had a great comment, but obviously staff is enjoying, well, I don't know how much they want to wear masks, but they probably love the personalization. But here's some good shots, Ida, of your kind of behind the scenes areas. Actually, that's your front facing, but this is actually, it's hard to see, Ida, but this is one of your staff windows with the plexiglass up, right?
Yeah, so that's what we call our World Gate station. It's where our tram and our train both launch from. So Crystal over there is kind of showcasing her behind. She's in that booth today. So she, again, like all of our places there at the front, we've got that nice little area where you can pass, the tickets and everything through it, or if you needed to. So in this location, they have to use take card or cash through it. So that's all there for them, when normally it's just a window that slides open and shut. So it just adds a little bit more safety.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but like right around here where I'm doing a terrible job with a laser pointer, there's the bottom of that plexiglass.
Yes.
So that's where that hanging plexiglass is. It's not a bad idea at all, and it certainly allows you to still have the ability to pass things like your maps back and forth through those areas. And then there's another side shot here of how you're protecting your scanning stations. That's a different perspective. I think it's important for people to see, you've kind of encapsulated your guests in the standing position here. I mean, your employees with the plexiglass around them.
Correct. Yep. So we added those 4. There's one per each side, and that way they can kind of stand there. There's still that 6 feet distance between them and the guest in front of them who is scanning their ticket at those scanners. And then our employees have to stand back and make sure that, the ticket scans correctly. They're not scanning their membership card, those types of things. But it does add that bit of safety on that piece as well.
And then, everybody behind the scenes shots, they're not always, there's a lot going on back here, but I've been in this booth when it's been packed. It's usually you have wall-to-wall employees working.
Exactly. Yeah. So normally, like on a busy day, so, we just had, 75-degree weather yesterday, which on any normal day in the summer would have given us 8,000 to 9,000 people. We did, 3,500 to keep within our requirements by the city guidelines. So on a 9,000 person day, we'd have all 9 of our windows open there, and, we only needed 2 for yesterday versus any normal. So in order to keep with that 6-foot distance between people, we've been doing every other window. And even then, we don't even need, every other window. It's usually, 1 to 2 people. So.
And I'm seeing a lot of, you have a lot of handout type of pieces of information. We had a question come in from Matt. Actually, we had a question come in. I thought it was from Matt, but are people receptive to handouts? Do they want a physical map? Do they want any of those items, or are they pretty much shying away from them?
For the most part, people are still wanting a map. The tickets, if they're coming up to the window, they know that they're getting a ticket. They have the opportunity to purchase it online. So if they really didn't want to be touching, any contact whatsoever with an employee, they didn't have to. But yeah, for the most part, maps seem to be, still people are wanting them. You do have the option. We have a PDF version on our website. So if you didn't want to have the map, you can also see it in that capacity as well. And then that kind of shows we actually had to open a whole new spot for our gift shop. So before on the former pictures, we had kind of where our exit now is for the gift shop. That was our entrance and exit. This is our new entrance here where Merritt is standing next to hand sanitizer. So we had to open basically our emergency exit and make it the new entrance and then make it one-way traffic through our gift shop.
And I have to say, this is one of my favorite photos of all time right now during this experience because everything's different. It's all you're changing, and this I just said, hey, what does it look like behind the scenes? And this is how you're doing some of your daily reminders. This is kind of a back of house. Obviously, it's a back of house area where your employees look like they're checking in through these zones.
Yeah, so this is our ride staff. They're kind of a little bit different in that, some of them come in at various times and their manager's not always right then and there to remind them of the things that is going on. Obviously, you can see that with the if no manager is here, call on the radio. But they usually, the whiteboard off to the right-hand side there has a couple of names that tells them where they're supposed to be at. But then again, double check that like someone didn't show up, so now we had to move you. Now we have different cleaning buckets that everybody uses. One day it's the B buckets, one day it's the A buckets, and that one goes back and forth daily as well. And so, different things now you have to grab a cleaning bucket, whereas before we didn't have those. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of story here, right? You might not have the
Yeah.
staff, you might not have the leads, you might not have the managers to check people in. So it's like, hey, you're on your own. Do this checklist. Go check this out. Grab your buckets. Where do you put the buckets? Where do you put the dirty towels? How do you, clean your trams? And I really think these are the types of images that are important to share because everything's going to change day to day, week to week, and it really shows that we can pivot, we can get creative. It's very low tech, but it really shows like we have to do what we have to do to keep our guests happy. So it's some real powerful pictures that just show what's going on behind the scenes at an attraction that's seen almost 4,000 people. That's a lot of people right now, and I think it's really a great success story to hear, how things are going.
Yeah.
Wow.
We also have to have, this just kind of shows like more of our, guest spot besides, our entrance people there. But like even at our like guest relations and as you're walking through the zoo, every so many feet, like every 100 feet, there's a hand sanitizing location. When you're at guest relations or anything like that, we've got 3 bottles of Virex that we're using to clean our surfaces every morning and every evening and, as needed throughout the day. So it's definitely a change in all of that as well. We've got more of those kinds of products sitting around than what we normally would have had.
Great information. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, everybody, I'm, of course, my slideshow is going to crash on this exact slide, so I can't seem to expand that. Wow. I'll try to stop sharing. Nope. It's actually completely crashed. That's great. I think I crashed my WebEx right when I was about to say thank you to everybody. Listen, we have over 100 people still joining us, so thank you guys for sticking with us as we go a little long. If you have any questions, of course, just reach out to us at Gateway. Matthew, what's the email address for questions and answers? Marketing at
marketing@gatewayticketing.com, and we'd be happy to address any questions you have. We really want to thank everybody for joining us today. I know that we talked a lot about getting prepared for reopening and making sure that kind of from a web store standpoint, you're ready. We do want to make sure you're aware that we did a Tuesday talk, and it's available on the Knowledge Base, where we talked about how to make sure our web stores are prepared for that. So please feel free to check that out and join us on July 8th for our next webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those Tuesday talks are great. They're really topical, and I appreciate you guys all being here. We'll see you in 2 weeks. If you're a Gateway customer, we'll see you next Tuesday. Our next webinar, if you have any great ideas and you want to participate, we'd love to have you join us. Just reach out to us and let us know you want to share some of your stories. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We wish you all health and safety, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.